And welcome back to a special episode of the Creative Cranium. I got some terrific guests tonight. Please welcome Mr. Chad Perkins and Stokes the writer. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to see you guys again. And we got a terrific topic. Tonight, we're going to talk about minimizing costs for the creator, because I've noticed this year that it seems like costs have been spiraling out of control. And we're going to talk about two things, mainly convention costs and also publishing costs. So let's dive right into the questions. I'm going to start with Stokes. You know, we met briefly, as you said, in the Baltimore Comic-Con last year. And, you know, the thought occurred to me, you know, there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of us, and we're all within 10 feet of each other. Maybe we should be teaming up somehow. Do you think there's any value to teaming up for conventions?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like what I saw when I went to Baltimore 2022. Yeah, 2022. They would do a thing where they would have some kind of like scavenger hunt where you have to find everybody, like a bunch of creators got together and got their name on like a little sheet, and it would make sure that people went from table to table. And that was a nice thing. I do think teaming up at a con whenever possible is good. Like something that I would consider is like splitting a table potentially, you know, because then you got somebody with you, so it's not going to be as much of a drag. You're splitting costs, you know, and you know you can hype each other up. You know, you have 2 people at a table that are familiar with each other's work, so
Right.
it should be it should be easy.
Could be a smart move.
Yeah, for sure.
So Chad, let me ask you the question, but in a little different way. Do you think that, I think one of the concerns about teaming up is that a little bit of your message might be diluted, right? Like you're only getting, let's say if you're teamed up with another person, maybe you're only getting 50% of the marketing impact. Do you think that's the case, or is it more like you're still getting the full impact?
Truth be told, I don't exactly understand what you're saying.
Like, I guess I would say, you know, one of the things like in a display, you want to have a big display and kind of make a big splash marketing wise.
Oh, okay.
So if you split it, do you think maybe you're only getting 50% of the bang?
No, I don't think so.
Tell
I
me a
think
little
if
more
you're
why.
well, because if you're both hyping each other up, you're both going at it 100% together. Like, because me and Blake, Matthias, he does a kids book called Tuck and Roll, and then I do Blue Lullaby, which is a horror crime comic. But him and I play off of each other very well. It's like, hey, you know what? If you have kids, you can buy this book. But if you like horror stuff, you want more of like a teen stuff, you can buy, you know, his book. You can tell stories to people. But no, I don't think so. As long as you're both like putting in the effort together at the table, I don't think it's actually a 50-50 thing. I think both of you are 100% with each other. And then it's same thing with like sales, because that was one of the things that Blake and I talked about too, is well, what happens if he gets more sales and I don't get sales? Like, I don't care, man. I'm hyping you up and I'm watching you make money and we're having fun. Like, it's that kind of nice thing that happens. So
that's a great attitude to have. And I think I would just add one quick comment. Like, I sometimes team up with David Dowd. Do you know him?
I think
He's
so.
the
Yeah,
writer
probably.
of Dusk and the Adventures of Miss Tilney, which is out through Antarctica Press. Super nice guy, and he's also one of those who's like a like he's like you. He's real positive and he shouts out to customers. And I think one of the things that you said is true, that you need to have 2 people that are sort of wired together, because you know, as you know, conventions more than ever, you can't sit there and be drawing or whatever you're doing. Man, you got to be shouting out to the customers to kind of get their attention.
The best thing that we ever did at a convention to get people's attention was the lights went out during a convention, so we were all in the dark. No, it was great. It actually made the best sales because we kept saying, listen, if you buy this, you can't see it. So when you buy this and take it home, it's not on us. Like, and you don't like it. Like, you can't see it right now. So buy it. Be a surprise. And actually, it went really well. So.
Well, and my next question would be, for conventions, I've noticed that they've changed a little bit. And by the way, I'm not necessarily an expert. I've been doing this since 2019, so that's 4 years, right? It'll be 5 years this year. But before, there was more of an emphasis on supporting the creators. And it seems like now cons realize that they can sell us tables whether they support us or not. And I was wondering, I'll jump over to Stokes here. Do you think there'd be any value in, like we talked about teaming up, what if we created something like an indie creator con that was open to only indies, let's say? And that's in that way keeping anybody out that would want to come. If cosplayers want to come, great, but it would focus on the indies and it would try to emphasize our works. What do you think of an idea like that, and how would you think about putting it together?
So I think and you know me, I like to be as practical as possible. You need the reality that is that you need everybody, the ecosystem of con. You need everything there. You know what I'm saying? You need the big vendors. You need the cosplayers. You need the people that are just selling basically copyright. Infringement. They're just selling like the Superman prints or the Batman prints. You need all of that stuff because that's the foot traffic. To be honest, I don't think an indie comic convention would bring in the foot traffic necessarily. I still think you're better off. The more foot traffic, the better, essentially. I still think you have a better chance of selling. Also, what's to say that if it's 100 vendors that do indie comics, nobody's going to walk into the con with like $1,000 to spend and buy each comic, So
yeah.
I understand. I think, and I talk about this a lot. I think the thing you have to do is just focus on making a product that is like undeniable. If you make an incredible product that looks great, you will never have to worry about. You will never have to worry about a lot of this stuff that comes up essentially. Because I can sell, or let me say, the people that are great sellers can sell anywhere. They can go to a non-comic convention and sell. You know what I'm saying? Like Pat Shane will go to Exotica and sell.
That's
really
a great
well.
idea. That's
such a
by
good
the way.
idea.
Yeah,
I applaud that. Listen, Thirsty was a great comic.
that's my guy, man. I love Pat.
I love Pat too. I like Raven too. They're both great.
Bro, Raven is crazy. Raven's absolutely crazy.
That's why I love that man. He's my spirit animal.
Yeah, we'll give Pat a quick shout out. He helped me a little bit with the structure of my last Kickstarter with like some tips and stuff, and had our best Kickstarter ever. So we listened to him.
Look at that! I talked to Raven one time, and like I like a nice controlled environment. And he just came in like a fucking sludge. Can I curse on it? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can, man.
He came in like a sledgehammer and just like knocked that out. But but essentially, I think what should be focused the thing is our job is paradoxical because essentially in a lot of cases being a nerd is not necessarily line up with being like super social. It doesn't necessarily line up with being super outgoing or super bombastic or extroverted. But those are the qualities you need to sell at a con. Yep. You have to talk to everybody. You have to be approachable. You have to like, there's a rhythm when you're talking to people. There's a flow, like I'll say you don't need it, but some charisma helps.
Right.
And maybe that's why when you get a Charlie Stickney or a Pat Shan, these people that are super approachable and charismatic.
They're charismatic guys. Admittedly, they're charismatic guys. I agree.
Exactly. So it's not like, and it's unfortunate. I hate because you don't want to tell somebody who's like got a quiet voice that like, oh, you're not going to sell anything. But like I said, I'll say it's advantageous for that sort of thing. So again, whenever price is going to keep going up, price is going to keep going up, comp price is going to keep going up. The price of the comic printing is everything's going to keep rising. But if you dedicate yourself to the craft of making comics, which is also the craft of selling comics, then hopefully you could endure the prices raising.
A great answer, Stokes. And I tell you what I liked about it. we've talked a little bit in some of the other groups that we're trying to create something that endures. And that is really, if it stands the test of time, really what you need is quality, and it's not really based on marketing and pricing and this kind of thing. So let me jump over to Chad. So one of the advantages we have in this panel tonight is all three of us are writers, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that there's a, how do I say this?
I can doodle.
Yeah, I can too. But
I can't. I cannot.
I'm not ever going to be. I'm not ever going to be an artist, unfortunately. But you know, there's a tendency for writers to be a little bit better with the spoken word, right? So maybe we have a little bit of a leg up when we're going to the conventions and so forth. I think Stokes is probably right. I'm not sure if an indie con is necessarily going to bring the people that we want. Do you have any thoughts, Chad, on what would be some of the things that would attract, you know, not to use this word, but like an average customer, let's say, what would do something that writers could do that would attract the average customer?
That's truth be told, though, I think just targeting the community would be like whatever community that you're in would probably target the average customer. And the only reason why I'm saying that is that I did a small convention. Well, it wasn't even a convention. It was like a little art show at my work. I got a table because it was like a staff art show where everybody put their books, and I had my books out, like, so, and I had that. The people were just interested, even if they didn't read comics, they were just interested to come and check it out because they saw art fair at the university.
Oh, neat.
So I think if you're targeting the actual community that you're in, so let's say you rent out a library and you're like, you put little signs out, people are going to come to it, whether it's, you know, something they want to or not. Like, especially if it's free, you know, free cons.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one too. And I've been trying to reach out to some of the libraries in my area. That's my new thing for 2024 is try library stuff. And
One of the, sorry. But
it's okay. Go ahead, finish your
okay.
thought.
So one of my local comic shops in downtown Ann Arbor that I frequent, they were actually trying to do a like free comic book day convention, where they just block out the entire street and it's just independent writers and artists.
Oh, that sounds
and
awesome.
It's just exclusively like self-created stuff. And honestly, when you go to downtown places, that's always busy. Like, I don't think I've ever seen Vault of Midnight ever not busy because of
Vault
how
of Midnight,
involved
that
they
is
are.
that's your
That's
local
my
comic store?
that's my local comic shop. Yeah.
Cool name.
So
Ooh.
yeah, it's very
Nice.
cool. They're great people too. They support a lot of indie creators. They have my books on sale. So
Nice.
yeah.
And I've said before, man, it's a tough time to be a comic store, right? Because they are quickly finding that it's not, let's be honest, indie comics at, let's say, a $5 price point is not their most profitable item.
Truth be told, though, trade paperbacks have seemed to be more of what people target lately than single issues.
Right. Hey, tell you what,
Yeah.
since you brought it up, that's the next question.
Okay.
Let's jump over to Stokes. So one of the things is the production costs of publishing have increased in the last couple of years somewhat dramatically, right? And in this case, I would say that generally speaking, floppies used to be in that $4 or $5, $6 price point. My first question is, can floppies survive at that price point? And the second thing is, are you planning to move toward trades and that kind of thing? What's your strategy, Stokes the writer?
I think floppies will always exist because it's not cost effective, I think, to go straight to trades, right?
Why do you think
you
that?
need the
Tell us.
money.
Yeah, expand on that a little bit. Why would you say that?
For sure. So let's say the smallest trade is $60, or Jesus, 60 pages,
The
right?
heck are you charging?
I know, right? Let's say what's 24 times 3? 72. Let's say the smallest trade is 72 pages. So, and let's say 72 pages. Let's say I'm paying my artist, let's make the math easy, $100 a page. So I need $7,200
To break even
up front, and that's before lettering. I'm assuming the artist is doing the coloring. So essentially I would need like, almost $8,000 to get to the trade.
Right.
Whereas a floppy, you can just cut it into thirds. And then also the benefit, I also think we need to make distinction between kickstarting and then direct market. Because when you're kickstarting, when you do it issue by issue, you get, let's say you get a 5K return, you know, per issue per floppy. So I do 3 floppies. That's $15,000. And then, like, let's say I could do then the trade sells for 10. Like, I just made $25,000. Where if maybe I go straight to trade, maybe I make 15K. You know, maybe I think the margins are much worse. And then the benefit also of doing the floppies and then doing a trade is that you have no expenses, or you don't have no expenses, but the expenses are the most of the comics
you can spread it across. You can spread it across and sort of budget.
Well, it's not even true, because if I make 3 floppies and then put them in a volume, all the artwork is already paid for. The artwork, the lettering, the most expensive part is already paid for.
Right.
And then whatever I make from the trade is essentially profit.
Yeah.
So that's for crowdfunding, and that's why I think we have to distinguish between the two. And I like the default being Kickstarter, because I think that is the biggest seller of indie comics right now. You know?
Yeah.
I would always describe the direct market as like a phase 4, phase 5, and Kickstarter is like phase 1, right? Like, that's what you do after you kickstart a bunch of books. You hit up Diamond, and then you worry about the direct market. But I think that's like later down the road.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing, by the way. And I think that's a great answer. You definitely nailed it. You know, the tough thing about the direct market, and I'm going to use my experience, and if I say something you feel different, go ahead and chime in. But so I got my Antarctic press deal, and I don't mind talking about numbers and stuff. If you guys don't want to talk about numbers, I respect that. But in my case, it's, you know, I get paid a page rate, which is rather small, but then I get 10% of everything over 6,500 copies. But now what you're going to find that a guy in my category, I never hit 6,500 copies. Yeah. So it's a little bit, I don't want to say rigged, because obviously if I hit that, I'll get paid, but it's not maybe the most advantageous to the creator. That's one man's opinion. Chad, what do you think about that? Should your main push be toward crowdfunding your own product, or should your main push be trying to get into the previews catalog with Diamond?
Actually, this is a fun question. Right? Well, because it's actually something that I've actually been recently thinking about too. And my biggest thought process is, I think at first you should definitely start with kickstarting, because at least that way, when you're doing the floppies, you can gauge the interest. But at the same exact time, though, you can take your time. When you get into the publishing world, especially when I was in through Marcosia, now granted, Blue is a totally different thing. Art was paid for, everything was done. I just transferred the contract over. But when you're tied to deadlines. So I think when you're first starting out, you should definitely start with kickstarting first. Because I don't think floppies are going to die with kickstarting. I don't think that'll be the case. But I think with direct market, I think trade paperbacks are going to be a little bit more, especially because like manga currently is pretty popular.
Yeah, very popular.
But no, I really do think that you should start with crowdfunding first. And like one of the books that I'm currently working on, I do know that I'm like, no, this one I do want to get published. Like, this is one I do want to get out in the world. And then there are other ones where I just do for fun with kickstarting. So it's kind of like, I think it's really just a balance, but I don't think your main target needs to be going with a publisher. So I think you should start with kickstarting. I mean, look at Carissa. She's freaking awesome.
Yeah, she's banging the gong over there on Kickstarter.
Yeah, and John Westhoff's doing great.
Yeah, which kind of shows you that to tie it all in, that if you take the time and build
you're doing really good too.
You build the following, and eventually, if you build it, they will come. And the hope is that if you release all the floppies, say if you, like in my case, we just did 4 issues, right? And they were all successfully funded. Now I released the trade. The trade was the best one ever. Some of that was because of the price point of the trade, right? But I guess, let me ask this question next. I'll jump over to Stokes. So if you have somebody that just followed, let's say you had 4 floppies in a row, will they show up for the trade?
It's possible. It's possible. So what I'm gonna do for whatever trade I make, one, I think there are consumers that only buy trades because of the value, right? Because especially on Kickstarter, you're talking about like you get double the page count you know, like at almost a similar price. But what you could do is, and I got shout out Chris Moses for putting me on this. You make a short, and you put it in the trade, and that way that you can say, oh, there's something new, like there's something you don't have, and hopefully that's enough to get the consumer to be like, okay, yeah, I'll spend the $25 for this trade because I'm getting something new, and then hopefully that becomes worth it, you know. And it's also doing a short is also, anytime you get a new artist, you can get a different artist. It offers an opportunity to test out a new artist as well.
I think Greg Alisi does that too. He does a Nazi. I think he did like a birthday special with his trade, and it was actually really good. Also, he's like one of my favorite stories to tell with Motor City Comic Con. But anyway.
Well, and that's a pretty good way to put it, right? Like when you talk about, well, I guess there's two things to worry about when you release a trade. Number one, you have a little bit of extra publishing costs because the page count. We're going to get to that in just a minute. And then the second thing is you've got a chance that you might lose that customer because they just bought those 4 issues. So like Stokes said, if you got some bonus content in there, you know, you can reel them in that way. You know, I want to circle back around, and we talked about the publishing costs being up. And I don't mean just the page count. Like, let's use crowdfunding, for example, because of course now you got, 5% right off the top for Kickstarter. And I actually just noticed this for the first time. Now there's what is it? There's a percentage for credit card transactions and built into it too now.
That's been the thing since I believe the very beginning, because you know you have to pay. You have to pay to get the credit cards. Yeah.
Right.
Like the 7-Eleven has to pay Visa to swipe cards.
That's one of the things, especially when you go to conventions and you're using like Square or like even Cash App and everything. Like they're gonna take a percentage of that regardless. That's why, and it's like cash is king at conventions.
Yeah.
So, because I can just throw that in my pocket or buy a bunch of drinks and just be drunk the entire day. But anyway.
Now, I have noticed a definite downward trend in cash buyers at conventions, though. And look, I get why, because it's so much easier to carry your card, and nobody wants to carry, you know, $500,000, $600,000, whatever they want to carry. So I guess my next question would be, so let's say I don't think it's 3% for the credit card, or is it 3? Maybe it is 3%.
It depends.
No, I think
it depends. Like the max it will be though is 5%. But I also think that it's like one of those things. I had a conversation about production cost, and there was a guy, I'm gonna do a small tangent. There was a guy that was like, this one creator was like, hey, it can cost $15,000 to make a floppy. And I'm just sitting there like, what the hell? How much? Like, what are you paying for a floppy to make?
to make this, that.
Yeah, and this individual, and this is also kind of a problem I have with a lot of indie comics, is that people are pushing agendas. They're not saying like what that person was saying was, my expenses are built into the cost, so be prepared to pay more for one of my books. But what it's saying is like, oh yeah, you can. Some books cost $15,000 for a floppy, so it's like, it's not disingenuous. I wouldn't go that far, but it's not like super genuous. Is that, I don't know if that's a word. And then another person was like, yeah, well, if you know, it cost me $8,000 to make the book, but if I ship it out, that costs $7,000, like for shipping and distribution and stuff like that. But I'm like, but the distribution cost is relative to how many comics you sell.
Yeah.
So I don't think that should factor into the production. It's literally not the production cost. Because yeah, if I sell 10,000 comics, I'm going to pay $50,000 in shipping, but I also made the revenue from those 10,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so when you're talking, some of these expenses are relative to how much you're selling.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me ask a different way, because I think you got a lot of truth right there. The price point, like I was saying, and let's, for our example, some of my books are a little longer, but let's say a 24-page book, because that's kind of standard for a floppy.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and generally, that was going to be around $4, $5, $6. Does that sound about right to you guys?
Yeah.
For what? Wait. Hold on.
For 24 pages, full color lettered book.
And this is an indie book?
It's indie, right?
And this is not on Kickstarter, right? This is in person.
Well, let's keep Kickstarter too, but where I'm going with it, have we reached a point where that entry level should be a $10 book?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you
No.
should
Okay,
say
we,
the book.
hold on. We got disagreement right there, so I want to hear both of you. First, Stokes, you say that it should be a $10 book at 24 pages in color. Yes?
If we're talking
Okay.
about Kickstarter, if we're
Tell
talking
us
about
why.
Kickstarter,
Tell us why.
because when you Kickstarter is a boutique experience. Kickstarter is you are paying extra money to be in the process of creating something,
Right.
right? That's why it's more expensive to buy an indie book than to buy a Superman book, because a Superman book is going to be fine with or without your purchase. But the indie comic book on Kickstarter, again, I'm being specific to Kickstarter, you are essential, or at least the customer feels essential to getting that book created. And when I'm assuming when you support a creator, it feels that much more special because it's a much more intimate process. So that said, the price is baked in. Also, we don't have the infrastructure where Marvel or DC, so our expenses are going to be per book, and some are goods per book. Like printing, for instance, is going to be more expensive for me than DC, who are printing out probably tens of thousands, of books at a time.
Right.
So that's why I think 15 is a fine standard for colored comics.
So you say $15?
I think 15, and then that's for 24 pages, and then once you
Okay.
get to like 32 pages, maybe 16, or if you're doing 36 pages, 20 exactly, because the consumer is prepared to pay that. The consumer has the consumer. Kickstarter users are very smart, because Kickstarter as a platform informs its creators a lot, and it informs the backers as well. So when I look at a campaign that has a $10 book, I'm like, this campaign has 200 backers and it's at $5,000. It's like, what happened? It's like, oh, you price things too low, when in reality the people that are backing your book probably would back at 15. And if you price somebody out at 15, then you have the PDF. Just buy the PDF. A lot of people on Kickstarter are just exclusive PDFs.
Yeah. Chad, so you originally were saying no to that question. Tell us your thoughts on, first, really the question is $10 too high for a 24-page colored floppy?
If he's truth be told, what Stokes said kind of
makes sense.
It makes incredible sense. I'm like, no, you know what? I can't really argue that. But one of my points I wanted to bring up is also does depend on the economy as well. Because especially when, people aren't getting paid a lot, and that's a whole other political situation, but it also just depends on that. But if you do have the dedicated backers, I mean, I am, especially with Kickstarter, as a comic creator and also just a comic book lover, I am willing to pay, $10 for a book. I am willing to go to the convention and pay it. But when it comes to like the average consumer, they're not going to understand that. So when you're looking at these people that are coming into conventions or just on Kickstarter and they're like, oh my God, $10 for a 24-page book, they're not going to understand the actual like logistic idea that goes into. And I think that's one of the things is where it's like loyalty definitely comes into play when you're selling a $10 to $15 book for or a 24-page book for $10 to $15.
Yeah. So Chad, let me ask you this then. So, and Stokes, I'll ask you this too then. So if you are, how do I want to say this? Okay. So let's say it's a $10 floppy on Kickstarter because it's baked in, and I think we both agree with Stokes, but
sure.
Yeah, he's saying 15. That's pretty aggressive, but if you're at a convention, if you're at a convention, do you sell it for a reduced amount at the convention? Chad?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And what would be, Chad, what's your price point for a convention then?
Well, I don't usually sell floppies, but usually for mine, it's like, $25 a trade. Is usually what I paid. And that also depends on like the market as well. But if I was selling a floppy, which I did sell floppies for a little bit, I sold them for about $6. But at the same exact time though, that's also if I'm looking at, and we can get into that later if we wanted to, which convention you're
Right. So, some
So
will
if
support it, and how many customers, all that kind of
right,
stuff.
yeah, because if I'm at Motor City Comic Con, I might charge a little bit more, only because the table's a lot higher.
Do you mind if I
So
ask what's the cost of a table there?
I think it's like I one of my one of the girls that I do table with is currently doing the contract, so I don't know what the price is right now, but it was like 400 a table,
It's
I
about right.
think last time I looked.
Yeah.
So not terrible, but still like just how Motor City
You got to
Comic Con
take it
is.
into
But yeah,
account, right?
yeah,
We're talking
you
about the
definitely
cost.
gotta
Yeah.
take that into account. Yeah.
So Stokes, how
Just
about you? Do you sell the in your case the $15 floppy? What do you sell it for at, say, Baltimore?
You sell it lower. You sell it lower because the book's already done,
Right.
right? Because on Kickstarter, you are supposed to be aiding in the production of the book. After that, then yeah, I'll sell it for 10, and then I also bundle it. Like I'm like, yo, if you
yeah,
buy if you buy 3 books, it'll be 3 for 20. Um, and I think it's correct that a random consumer won't understand what a Kickstarter, because it's bizarre. But I think that goes back to, like I said, making an undeniable product. Make a
yeah,
book or make a product that looks so cool to somebody that they'll power through, and they will spend that money. And then as they keep backing books, Kickstarter will educate them on on uh on what's going on,
yeah,
essentially. It will inform them on what's going on.
yeah. And especially if you have like a good product that you sell out. And again, we can use, Doug Ten Apple when he did the Earthworm Jim hardbacks, and yes, I supported that because goddamn, it was beautiful. He over delivered when he did that campaign, and I think if you do that, I'm not saying like, yeah, you paid $15, here's $10,000 of merchandise, but if you just show them that you gave them a nice little note or just something to like go that extra mile, those people will say, "Oh, I understand," because you're personally bagging and boarding this stuff. Like you are footing this stuff when you're doing it. So I think that'll definitely play a key factor
And
as
that's
well.
free. That's
So yeah,
expensive.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's a great
Tell you
point.
what, I really like that answer. So let me make a question based on that. I got a friend by. Do you guys know Edward Davis? He writes Immortal Era.
yes, I
That
do.
sounds so
Yep.
Yeah.
familiar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Super
actually
great
have.
guy.
I actually have that book.
Yeah.
So,
His new one
yeah.
just came in the mail. That's Corruptor. We'll give him a shout out.
Oh, I
And
didn't. Oh, I missed it.
one of the cool things that he
Yeah.
does, and I used to do this, which is he sends a little handwritten thank you note in every order.
Yes,
And I think
Stephen
that is
Prince.
so classy, right? And for me, and
Yeah.
again, this isn't a one size fits all thing. We all have different levels. Like once I got to, man, I'll just say this, and then you guys tell your opinion. When it gets over 200 customers, I don't have the time to fulfill that many orders. So I go with a fulfillment company. In my case, it's Comics Wellspring. So I no
Yep.
longer send the little handwritten cards. Stokes, do you send any kind of handwritten or personal information to your customers? And if so, what do you send them?
Let me say, I hate fulfillment sites, but
We all,
Yeah, we all
I
do.
actually agree with that too.
I had to talk somebody down, and then they gave me one of their books that was via Comics Soul Spring,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I'm not saying this is a kid. It wasn't 10. And
I live right down the road from Comics Wall Springs, by the way.
Oh, nice.
the cover was like blurry, like it didn't
Yeah.
have the DPIs. It was like, or it was zoomed out. It didn't fit correctly. Like, and I was like, man, I don't understand. I just don't understand like it's already so expensive. Why make it? Why
Yeah.
decrease your margins? And it's just like, bro, you know what you do? You just set the fulfillment a month later. Like, just
Yeah.
like take
Or
more
like,
time to fulfill.
truth be told too, like you can set the fulfillment like really whatever you want, and a lot of people won't complain. Like
Yeah.
I had mine set for when I did Sparkle Dog. I had mine set for like April of last year, and the book was in September. So it was like, people are just anticipating it, or sometimes they just forget. And I'm not saying, you shouldn't even do the book, but I'm just saying, like, some people are just going to forget. And then when they get in the mail, it, like, kind of makes it a little bit more special. Um, at the same exact time, though, I hate fulfillment centers. For me, doing the fulfillment is actually kind of fun.
Oh, hold on. I
Like-
misunderstood your guys' reply then, because I'll jump in here. I'm on the other side of that. My last one that I fulfilled myself was the Lost at Sea book, and that was like maybe, what's that, 170 customers? Still doable, right?
Mhm.
But what happens, and this is one man's opinion, like I want to be writer guy, and I quickly had become post office guy. And
Ugh.
what I mean by that, I was in the post office every day for, well, it was almost 3 weeks. And I remember thinking, man, what am I doing here? Like this, in other words, it takes out of my writing time. And it's easy to say, what's the right way to say this one? Like the most valuable commodity for all three of us isn't actually the money, it's the time. Like really what you're doing is you're borrowing the time when we could have been writing the next book or, developing the next Kickstarter. But instead we're post office guys stamping and licking and bagging and boarding.
Here's
And
the thing though.
Yeah,
Did you
go ahead.
use like a mail service site for that?
Did you use Pirate Bay? They're
Did you use
great.
Pirate Ship? Yeah. You say Pirate Bay.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, Pirate Ship. Sorry, not Pirate
Just
Bay.
told on
Pirate
yourself.
Bay. Pirate Bay is a torrent. Anyway,
We don't
Yeah.
use those.
no,
But
No, but
yeah,
don't use
so
those at all. Never.
let me say this. Let me say this, Tim. And like as far as fulfillment goes, I got a thermal printer and it changed my life. Like you get a thermal printer, you basically download the CSV from Kickstarter, you throw it in the pirate ship, and it prints out all the labels. And you just slap the label on it, and you put it in a Dropbox. You never have to go to the post. Oh, you have to go drive to the post office, but I mean, you just drop it off.
And you could do 60 at a time or 100 at a time, whatever.
We literally, I had a comic book I did with Chris Moses called Extras Club. And I got the books on a Friday, and I spent Friday and Saturday just bagging up comics. It was like 150 plus orders, and then I had a friend. She would like box up the comics. I would print out the labels, and we got it fulfilled essentially like 90% of the way within one weekend.
Mhm.
And it's not about. It's really about optimizing the process, and that's the thing I see with a lot of comic creators. It's like, well, I don't like this, so I'm not even gonna try. But like, and this, I got into trouble on Twitter because I said marketing is a comic making skill. What I meant by that is, if you master this,
Marketing is a what?
comic book making skill.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
my point was, if you master this, then it'll be easier for you to make comics. Like it'll be
Mhm.
easier for sell comics. So people don't look at these things such as fulfillment or marketing or social media presence or even podcasting interviews as comic making skills. But when you get better at those, you'll find it's easier to make.
Yeah.
So it's like
Right.
I couldn't get on Twitter and say, wow, I'm a comic book creator. I really hate writing. I really hate like writing a script and like editing and like I couldn't say that shit. But you could go and be like, oh my God, I hate fulfillment. And people are like, yeah, me too. It's like, no. Give them tips. Give them tips so they can optimize the process. So they'll hate it less. Because if I didn't have a thermal printer, I would despise fulfillment. I would hate it.
Yeah. All right, Stokes. I agree with you 100%. And a thermal printer is definitely a great idea. My thing is this when it comes to fulfillment, because when I did the Sparkle Dog campaign, and I sat there, and Blake came over, and we looked at, we had maybe about 100, like we only had like 60 orders. I mean, it was a successful campaign. We were great, but we had 60 orders, and it was just kind of nice to crack open a beer, get some music going, and just kind of just hang out and vibe with it. And I think that's like optimizing the process.
Yeah,
that plays a key role into it. Is just when you have a buddy or somebody that you work together with, and you're just bagging and boarding them, and you're shooting the shit, and you're like, hey, we could have did this better. It's like it gets that brainstorming together. And granted, I 100% lie, Stokes, or you will lie. You know for a fact when you sit down at that computer and you're about to write, you're like, God damn it, I gotta write this.
No.
Like every single one of it. Every
No.
time.
I don't know.
Teach me your ways, senpai.
I've been writing for 15 years.
Yeah.
So I try to optimize everything.
Mhm.
Right. And I also think I think it's also contextual, right? Because there are some things that you're like, oh, I can't wait to write this. I can't write. And there's some things where it's a reach. You're like, oh, I'm gonna need a second draft for sure, or third draft.
Yeah.
So it all depends, right? But like it just goes back to my main point, which is always just find a way to make things make things work for you, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, you have to become resourceful. I mean, I think that's
Right.
like the overall kind of
That is a great
thesis.
that is a great root word for what we're talking about, is being resourceful. Because, you know, it's like you said earlier, there's these skills that you have to kind of develop that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's a journey, right? And sort of all these other happens in the meanwhile. Like I shouldn't make it sound like I never did it. Like my first 5 I fulfilled myself, and it wasn't like, luckily the numbers started getting big and I started going, you know what, how much extra is it for somebody else to fulfill it? Because it wasn't, my only hesitation is I still want to send, you know, some kind of handwritten note, because I
Yeah.
think that's a classy thing to do, and I think it's very personal.
I'll
But I tell you, when you talk about like guys like you know, hey, we'll use Pat Shan for the example, or any of these guys that, you know, Bad Bug Media, and they got 800 customers. They're not fulfilling it themselves, because you're putting at least as much effort into your fulfillment as you are into the writing and marketing and podcasting and other things. But that's again, that's
Pat
one man's
has a
opinion.
team.
yeah.
Pat has a team that will
Yeah, they're the
fulfill.
source
Yeah.
between guys or something. Source
No, no,
between.
no, no, no. He has his friends that will
Space
like
between, but
Oh,
space
yeah.
between.
Yeah, space
He has
between.
people that will fulfill, you know, that will go up. He has a team of that fulfill and stuff like that. But like I said, I mean, I just don't. To me, it's all part of the process.
Yeah.
So when it's like, oh, it's taken away from my writing, like no. Well, also the thing is that the writing is like not laborious at all. Like writing, you can write on a notepad, like literally, or a notepad. You can write on the notes on your phone.
That's what I'm
Like
doing
you
right now.
can write. Writing is literally thinking. It's organized thinking. So it's like, I mean, again, and that I'm just speaking. This is subjective, but it's
Sure.
also like, guess what? You can write anything. Nothing is stopping you from writing. You can write to your heart's content, but you need to fulfill the comics to make more comics. Like
Right.
that's the, like, you know what I'm saying? So
I also agree with Stokes when it comes like writing is thinking. When you're doing the fulfillment, that is a good time for you to actually think of how you can improve your writing too. Like just looking over the book, because it is different in my personal opinion. It is different having it on the computer, like reading it on the computer and then reading it in your hands.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do truly believe that, because then when you're looking at, you get like every little detail, every little like writing thing, and you're like, oh yeah, like Blue Lullaby. When I was reading it on the digitally, and I just recently pulled one of the trade paperbacks, I found a spelling error. And the book's been out for like 2 years.
Oh,
And I didn't catch that. So it's like, it's just one of those things that you can definitely use as more of a tool to see how you can improve your writing. Also too, I do want to make a quick shout out for Stephen Prince, who does with Monster Matador, is
oh
that every
yeah.
time he does a fulfillment, he always does a little doodle, and I absolutely love it.
That-
I
like I
have
said,
one
it's
framed.
super classy.
So
You know, I'll definitely give that some thought. You know, I think that
yeah.
you guys have a lot of wisdom there. But, you know, to me, time is more than money. What I'm going to run out of is time.
Sure. And I do think, though, Stokes did bring up a good point of where money, because he disappeared, because, you know, we're making good points and he's a coward. No, I'm just, I'm teasing. But he did say, though, that, you know, writing is, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
I also want to tap into that, too, is that that's a really good thing to consider when you're like experiencing writer's block. You can write anything. You can sit there on a little keypad and you can write the biggest bunch of bullshit you've ever written. But you're writing. Like you're writing whatever. And actually that starts generating ideas. That like gets your drive back. And that's also works when it comes to sitting down and doing your fulfillment by hand, Timothy, instead of hiring somebody. You know, you could sit there and be like, "Oh, that's a really good idea," and then write it down. Especially when you're doing a Kickstarter, what's kind of the good benefit of it too is that you can always go back and re-edit as well. So
Mhm.
like you can, as people will get the actual copy that you first sent out, and then the next Kickstarter you can be like, hey, by the way, I improved the script for the first issue, so that might entice them to get both issues again to see what might have gotten improved. Now, granted, that's just me spitballing with, you know, the idea that that could be a possibility, but that's just one thing that you could definitely think of when it comes to writing.
And man, I got to tell you, you guys are dropping some truth here, and I can't say I disagree. I am maybe more sensitive about time than
Nerd.
some. Yeah, for me, there's always so much I'm trying to do, and by the way, I'll use the Stokes mentioned too. The podcasting thing has become one of the elements of creators, right? Like I used to go on other people's podcasts all the time, and now I don't even have time to do that. I'm like, well, I'll do the Friday night thing, and I'm real happy with it. But it's never something that I saw coming. I guess I would put it that way. You know what I mean? So, like I was saying, it's a journey, and sort of all these other things happen on the way, and you have to kind of embrace them, because I'm fond of saying, if you're putting positivity out, the positivity will come to you. So as I was saying, I'm a fan of both of you guys' work. So let's talk a little bit about what you're promoting. So Stokes, the writer, he's got his Kickstarter live right now. Tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter that's going right now.
Absolutely. So when you see me looking to my right, I'm not on my phone. I'm just checking out the numbers.
Yeah, how they doing?
Look, this is shaping up to be my best campaign. Like
Nice.
I'm kind of over the moon. We got funded in the first day, first 12 hours, which is I've never done that before.
Yeah.
Never done that before. So that's a good feeling, and I'm feeling really good about my comic book career right now.
Nice, man.
Which
Congratulations.
is nice.
Congratulations.
Appreciate that, bro.
And while we're talking, I'm going to show we actually won't see the artwork here. I will quick trim this part out because you guys won't be able to visit. So let me just jump in here, and I will say, so Stokes, tell us a little bit about the artwork that we're looking at here.
Absolutely. So I'm sorry. I'm hearing my roommate in the background.
It's okay. Take a little pause, because I threw you a curveball. What I'll do over this portion in post, I'll add the covers of the book. How many covers do you want to show? 3 or 4?
Yeah, 4. Yeah, 4 works. So
okay. So take a pause. Take a pause, because this will be an edit. Ready? And I'll ask again. Okay. So Stokes, tell us a little bit about the covers that we're seeing here.
Absolutely. So per usual, I feel like when you go on Kickstarter and you're kind of doing this kind of book, which is largely about the covers, you're kind of like trying to get that collector market. We got a lot of very talented artists to work on this campaign. We have Mr. Bisley, we have Zine Mart, or I think that's how she says the name. Zine, we say Zine. Rodolphe, I think. He did with the ones with the girls upside down. Super talented. We got Marco Leone. We got a lot of covers. Marco Leone. It's just a great collection of artists. And I really wanted to capture every kind of angle of wrestling. I wanted to capture like the sexiness, like the action, the nostalgia, all that
what
stuff.
book is this?
This is called Tap or Die 2.
Okay. I sent you a Facebook request, by the way.
Hell yeah, I'm a good. And yeah, so yeah, that I think that's the main appeal. And Emilio Utera did the interiors, which I think are beautiful. We went with black and white to capture the grittiness of the sport. I'm also a big manga fan. Grew up on manga, so it's kind of like a nice tribute there. And also, you ain't got to pay for colors, so that's.
Hey, we're talking about minimizing costs. There's one right there. That'll save you what, 24 pages. You'll save $600 or $700.
I do want to leave a quick note on that too. If you have to do black and white, do not be ashamed to do that.
Oh no,
like legitimately do not, because it does not mean that in the future you can't do a colorized version. I'm looking at you, Dragon Ball Z, the manga.
Well, Stokes, I wish you every success with this project, man. And I was a fan of your work from before when we met in Baltimore, and I appreciate very much what you're trying to do. By which I mean creating something that endures. And I think that writers like you guys in particular, you tend to look at the work and say, how can I create something that lasts and that will be memorable? And I definitely think that you've achieved that with what you're doing. And also the wrestling thing, man, it kind of comes out of nowhere. This is a change up for you.
It is. I pride myself on being able to write anything. Truthfully, I pride myself on being adaptable. And I wanted to make something that was more in line with what was, let's be honest, selling on Kickstarter,
Yeah, sure.
Wrestling comics are popular.
Wrestling comics, NSFW, but I also wanted to make a story. Like, I would argue this is my best book. You know, like I think it's a fully realized version. It's kind of like my first comic book was Decay, which
Right.
Chad will tell you was a little bumpy. You
Yeah,
know,
but it's
like
hilarious. It's
it was a
so
little bumpy. So this is like, okay, I've roughed out some of the edges. I think it's just
yeah.
better. It's like more focused. It's just like really, really, really good. So I feel like, yeah, I feel like I could write anything. And then also, I want to work. I want to do work for hire jobs, but who's hiring right now? Who's hiring writers?
Right.
Pat Shan, who does NSFW stuff. You know, hopefully Bad Bug. We'll see. And it's like all these companies that might be hiring are doing this kind of stuff. So it just made sense. I handed this book to a publisher, Tapper died to a publisher, and they gave me a gig, like a short gig, which was nice. You know, like I think people are too frigid. I think I have a love for storytelling first and foremost, you know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, you know, to keep telling stories. That's what I care about. I don't care if it's got a hot naked girl on the front. I could care less because that doesn't invalidate the good storytelling that's on the inside of that book, you know.
Well said. Well said. Tap or Die 2. Go check it out right now. I'm going to roll a link across the bottom for us to click on. I think it looks terrific, man. I'm a fan of your work, Stokes, and I think you have the right mindset and the right positive attitude, and I predict success for you.
Thank you so much. I think going back a small quick pivot back to what we are talking about with as far as nerds, I think, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Yeah, you do.
No. I mean that it's different. Everybody has to persevere, right? Everybody has their own battles, but I think when you look at it, like you do kind of have to have like I said, adaptability, a resourcefulness, and I think being a nerd is a bit about doubling down on how you feel. It is a bit about like, you know, seeing the world through a very specific lens, and I think that is disadvantageous for being a combo creator. I think you have to see things from multiple perspectives, or I think it'd be better to see things from multiple perspectives. Cause I'll tell you what, I swore I was never going to do an SFW book when I first got the Kickstarter. I'm like, oh, these guys take an
Yeah,
easy
we
way
all
out.
said that. Shut up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Look at me now, you know. But shouts out to me for having the. I mean, I guess the survival to be like, shit. I guess I gotta, you know.
Yeah, I respect that. I respect that. Like I say, there's not really any wrong answers, you know.
Yeah.
So, Chad, how about you, my man? You know, I'm a fan of your work too. You got a new project coming out, right?
I do, yeah. So currently I have Tim Spavero, and I don't have anything to show at the moment because, you know, it's just been posting up on Facebook. But I am currently working on my new project is Set the Hook with Tim Spavero as the artist. It is Hellblazer meets Moby Dick, and it's about a man who's very angry at a fish. But I am working on that. But of course, you can pick up my book through Marcosia Enterprises, Blue Lullaby. You can pick that up currently, which is the full trade paperback right here. And then I also have 2 coming soon. The Legend of Sparkle Dog, Don't Say Oh Woo, issue 1 is actually going to be personally, that is going to be an exclusive me book. So that will actually be just specifically done by me. So I do have a couple of projects currently after being on hiatus for about 6 months. And I'm very excited to get back into the hot seat. Also, Stokes, I did want to tell you right now, I am absolutely proud of you for continuing to work on comics. Like, especially with Decay, I know it was like very silly, very like, yeah, it's about this guy who came back from the dead and everybody's cool about it. Well, but I absolutely love the fact that you keep trucking along, and that is great to see. I'm also working on a booby comic as well, so
Hell yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah, and I do want to applaud you too, saying that you can you can write anything.
Yeah,
and I do think that is a great thing to say because I want to write. Spoiler alerts. As much as I love revenge, gore, horror, and everything, I'm a sucker for romance comics. Like,
yeah,
and I would love to, and I'm trying my hardest to write a romance comic.
yeah.
It's so hard.
Well, I'll look forward to that.
Yeah, like Water World or Water
Wars.
Tim, what is Water Wars? Sorry, thank you. I always want to say Water World. Wars. Like it's like a sci type book. Like it's just I always want to watch a sci-fi book. I've always wanted to read it. You know what?
It's
Just
doing
ignore
well.
me. Just
It's doing well.
I know, and I'm very proud of both of you
Well,
for
thanks so much.
continuing.
Thanks so much.
So
And hey,
Appreciate you,
we're
bro.
just about to our time. So why don't we take the next couple of minutes? Real quick, just tell the viewers where they can find you. Stokes, you go first.
On at Stokes Writer on Twitter, and then Kickstarter, Anthony Stokes.
Tap or Die too. Go check it out.
Tap or Die too, yeah.
Chad, how about you? Where can we find you?
currently you can find me on X because, well, I mean, it's Twitter. Let's be all real.
Yeah.
But you can find me on that at Casual Nerd Chad. You can also add me on Facebook at Chad Perkins. I will be doing some other stuff where I'll be a little bit more media focused, but right now you can't really find me anywhere. So, but if
We'll
you
be
send me a
looking for you.
Facebook request, I'm kind of starting from the ground up. So,
Well,
yeah.
I want to say thanks to you guys for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge, and congratulations on your many successes. And I think the takeaway here tonight came from Stokes. Resourcefulness is the key to surviving in the current market. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. To the viewers, I want to say thanks for tuning in. This is an episode of the Creative Cranium. We will see you next Friday night. Good night, everybody.
Time to put on pants.